Hi, Kevin. This is Jeff, and I deeply appreciate you taking the time to respond to my response to your original video, and I'd like to respond to your response to my response to that. Um, I like this idea of sort of talking back and forth and a little bit of a soliloquy that then you listen to and see if you can stand and make up some thoughts and come back. Uh, I don't know that it'll respond to all the points that you bring up or necessarily be the best way to have a conversation. I think it'd be neat just to talk back and forth and much better than this, but this is what we've got, so let's go with it. I listened with great interest to your description of your studies and your skepticism and your having approached the Bible in the way that looks for error rather than looking for how it may be true, and I deeply respect that. And I have no problem with that. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. In fact, Jefferson admonished his son to be a skeptic and try to disprove God if he would build his faith. And that's how Jefferson came to the conclusions that he did, that there certainly was a God. He did not conclude, as you have not concluded, that Jesus was God. He, in fact, said that Jesus was specifically not God incarnate. However, that there was a Jesus is one of the better supported facts of history, I think, based on my understanding of the writings of Josephus. Herodotus, I think, wrote of him. There were a number of contemporary historians who have nothing to do with Christianity or the Bible or Judaism necessarily. Josephus was a Jew. But he wrote of a man going about doing miracles who was crucified, and the Roman records are relatively clear as well. The tradition of Jesus and the response between the Jews to whom he preached and others who believed in him, almost all Jews initially, of course, is also a matter of Jewish history and oral tradition, which is very difficult to argue, especially as the current Jews are not Christian and have absolutely no reason to perpetuate the stories of Jesus. So I have to say, I don't know where you get your information that there's a lack of sources. I think that you just haven't found them yet, and I would commend them to you, Josephus being one of them. The books of Scripture, I think part of as a matter of fact, the overwhelming mass of confusion that you exhibit with regard to religion versus the God of the Bible is this. I don't believe the Catholic Church has anything to do with Christianity, except to steal its name and to malign it by a bad example of how you absolutely would never follow Jesus. Let me explain why I say that. Romans persecuted Christians vehemently for 300 years, murdering them in huge numbers. And finally, basically, Constantine, I would say, just gave up and he adopted the, well, if you can't beat them, join them approach. I mean, really, in this sign, conquer, he said, that's not Christ. That's not Christianity. Christianity never showed us a sign whereby we would conquer other people. That absolutely has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus. And least of all do we owe Rome for the canonization of Scripture. Now, there's a very complicated and very powerful propaganda to that effect. Incidentally, the word propaganda was invented by the Vatican, and it means to propagate the faith. Of course, it's come to mean to us to spread lies, because American propaganda labeled Hitler's propaganda lies. That's why the common concept is so tainted and so covered with negative value. But the bottom line is that prior to Rome, what was Scripture? Well, all Scripture was completed in the 1st century A.D. It's pretty easy, and most scholars believe, it's well confirmed, that these books were codified by that time. But certainly the Bible that's given to us by those who rewrite and revise and whose translations you evidently read is very different from the one that was translated in 1611, the Textus Receptus, which was a collection of 5,000 manuscripts. I'm sure you're totally familiar with this. You say you studied all that, but I feel the need to review it because 5,000 manuscripts gathered from all across Anatolia and Asia Minor and the Greek peninsula, the Balkan peninsula, is a huge number of manuscripts taken from a very large area. And now 2 manuscripts taken from Alexandria and from the Vatican, which have seemed to be used to revise all Scripture based on their older age from the manuscripts that we had. And as you say, we have no original autographs. But the idea of revising a 5,000 manuscript set, which agreed with itself about 98% of the time, regardless of the dispersion of the texts in terms of their origin, revising that with 1 or 2 other texts, which are in fact partial texts and are much marked up, in fact one had been partially burned, is to me illogic. And it's explained to me by the parable of the sower. Jesus talked about the sower sowing seeds, and that birds came along and gathered them. This is Satan coming and taking away the word. The Catholic Church is in fact a satanic agency, I think, as specified in the book of Revelation. The whore that sits on the waters is from a city of 7 hills. Rome has always and ever been known as a city of 7 hills. And that was the source of the last Babylon, which is the one world church. Now, this is not standard Protestant teaching. I'm not a Protestant either. Protestantism comes out of Catholicism and owes much of its history and lineage and liturgy and everything else to Catholic teachings. I'm not a Protestant. I'm neither Protestant nor Catholic. Neither of those are Christian in their essence. Protestantism is a reaction to a non-Christian church. Some Protestants were very bright and very brave, but as you probably know, Martin Luther burned people at the stake because of their beliefs that he held were heretical. That's not Scripture. Jesus never commanded us to murder people because of the things that they said. The Old Testament does, in fact, give us some very hard words of judgment for those who would violate certain laws. And of course, the period prior to the law, the period of innocence, was also very different. So one of the things to explain apparent contradictions is that times change in the Bible, and God's covenant with man, his dispensations with men, have clearly changed. After Christ gave his life on the cross, then the rules of the law and animal sacrifice and even the Levitical dietary law are in fact fulfilled and overridden by the teachings in the New Testament. And you can't be unaware of that, so I'm sure I'm just saying that for other people's edification who might blunder into this and read this. You say that God is unprovable and that you wouldn't want to prove him because it's just not possible. And I think that you discount a whole realm of observations and of testimony and of evidence. People saying things is evidence. Now, you could say it's hearsay unless it's a personal experience. But I know many people who have a very intimate personal experience with God. And all those people saying what they do about how divine intervention and providence has shaped their lives, and most of our founding fathers are in that class, by the way, including Jefferson and Washington and even Franklin, who's long been suggested to have been a deist and even an atheist by modern education. They certainly believed in God, possibly a deist view, but very far from what you've said in your statements. And I think that what they said revealed great thought and great depth of thought. We create nothing. I reiterate, Kevin, ordering things which pre-exist is not creation. That's arrangement. Okay, that's placing into order. It's like the joke I think I told about the scientists who said they could make life out of dirt. God said, go ahead, try it. And they scooped up some dirt, and God said, get your own dirt. We make nothing. We've never made anything. That would violate the law of conservation of mass and energy, which I believe is the first law of thermodynamics. In our observation, nothing has ever been made from nothing. It defies the physical reality that we know. So man is most assuredly, and proven by science, not to have ever been a creator in recorded memory or in scientific observation. Making a computer is a far cry from creating. It's like cloning. We take pre-existing life and monkey with it and say we've created something. Not so. The atom. We didn't create out of nothing anything. And I'm not sure how to put that more clearly in order to get the point across. Perhaps it's a semantical point, and you think by, for example, me making a painting that I've created something. No, I've created nothing but a representation, and I haven't even really created that. Creativity doesn't exist in mankind. All we can do is take what we have and try and make it seem new. That reminds me of Paul's assessment of the Greeks. He said that they did nothing from day to day except to tell or to listen to some new thing. Remember that? In Acts chapter 17, Paul's sermon on Mars Hill. That's Americans today. We're Greeks. We don't believe Scripture. We're just making up some new thing all the time. Well, that's not creation, because there's nothing new under the sun. Show me a thing that you believe is new, and I'll show you its origin in something older, which predates it. Until you get to God, the only causeless cause. Building blocks would never assemble themselves, you said. Quite so. And because of that, we know that DNA never came out of non-DNA, because DNA is a code. It's written to be read and understood and acted upon. RNA. There's so much order around us that it boggles the mind. You could never categorize or catalog the amount of order that's around us that we didn't bring into order, but that was here when we got here. All the physical laws of nature represent order. That's law. Someone wrote that law, and that beginning has no explanation. That's better than, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Now, can I prove that? You're exactly right.